every time you pull out okay, let's look at some of the evidence. Yeah, but look, Woody said Thug didn't do it. That's the only thing I guarantee those jurors went back there and said to themselves, and they came back, and even though everybody else took a plea deal, they acquitted the last two.
Real life.
It ain't real life. Just ain't real life. Street Starz. You know what time it is.
Speaking of great attorneys, Brian Steele just beat 2 Ricos back to back. Explain how hard that is. I mean, that seems unprecedented.
Look, the dude is a monster lawyer. A monster lawyer. Matter of fact, we're gonna try to get him here. He's a monster.
Brian Steele.
he's a monster lawyer, and but there are key elements to a trial. Also, I told you that even though Steele was a great lawyer, I told you guys Woody messed that case up. Mm-hmm. I told you that at the time that case went on, it's the longest criminal case, the longest case in Georgia history. Mm-hmm. And nobody can remember anything about that trial and any other witnesses other than Woody.
It made him a celebrity.
It did.
Not only did it make Lil Bro a celebrity, but it showed a side. They were locking this man up and not feeding him and not letting him sleep and putting him through mental anguish just so that he would testify against Thug. And this guy said all of this from the stand. And he made a mockery of the prosecution. And so because of that, no one could remember anything but him.
And that was their witness too, right?
Right. And so when we go back there to deliberate and then we say, all right, man, what y'all think about this case? Man, I can't even remember what everybody else said. All I know is Lil Woody said Thug didn't do it. Right? That's all. And so every time you pull out okay, let's look at some of the evidence. Yeah, but Lil Woody said Thug didn't do it. That's the only thing I guarantee those jurors went back there and said to themselves, and they came back, and even though everybody else took a plea deal, they acquitted the last two. Right. And so in this case, I think there were key elements that really rang the bell of the jurors. Number one, those text messages that the defense read into the record.
Right.
We're not seeing sex trafficking. We're not seeing sex trafficking. The Jane is texting and initiating and saying that she wants to do this. What we have here is basically a horrible relationship that involves outside the norms or outside the normal norms of sex. That's not a crime. And I think the jury looked at that and basically said that, okay, you guys hit us with more sex stuff than Rico stuff.
Yeah. Do you think this is going to discourage them going after any other celebrities that may live this type of lifestyle?
Oh, well.
Or maybe in the same vein?
Of course not. Of course not, man. It's not. It's they got a job to do. They got a job to do. And speaking on that, and you're talking about Future, this is what I want to say. Any of those women that were harmed or have had similar things happen to them, speaking up early is important. Because she didn't come forward when the incident happened at the Intercontinental, the state couldn't bring charges. And so that was a lower standard and lower hanging fruit that they could have utilized. And so it's important that if you or your child have been harmed and sexually assaulted or abused, it's important to come forward early, because that's what really ends up doing the prosecution in. And so, because I've had calls come into my office and they were horrific. And they're like, this was done to me. He did this, he did that. And then I say, man, look, I think you have a case. When did this happen? 5 years ago. Mm. Were you a minor at the time? No. I'm not gonna be able to help you. You know, the statutes run on that, right? And so things like that play a huge role in this. You got to remember, in the Cosby case, they basically had to change the law to allow other victims to come forward.
I remember that. Yep.
And so, you know, make sure you understand, consult an attorney, give a call, and find out what your rights are.
Now, what you just said right there, and I think we see this happen a lot. A law getting changed just so certain people can be found guilty of something, or so more evidence can be brought against someone. Why is that even a thing? How is that allowed to happen? Like, why is that even a thing?
I mean, it's a change of time and in periods of time, right? You got to remember, slavery used to be legal.
Yeah,
Until
still
somebody
is.
say, this not right. This not quite right. And so, you know, laws like that are changed because when you have people who are minors or women who have been sexually assaulted, right? A lot of these women end up spending years in therapy before they can even talk about it, before they can even think about it. In some of them cases, before they can even remember what happened to them. And the whole time the clock is ticking. And so laws are changed to help adapt in that regard. And so, you know, shout out to my sister, Victoria, who's a former state representative. She was one of the women who actually helped change the laws in the state of Texas to extend the time for outcries, for women to come forward or people to come forward about bad acts.
And I know that it's very important for, you know, victims, but women with buyer's remorse or women that see an opportunity, how can an individual be shielded from things like that? Or is it like, because as bad as this was for Puffy, you know, I mean, he came out unscathed, but somebody else would have been destroyed. And it's all because of their sexual preferences.
The issue that you're going to have with that, right? I'm not saying it's not a thing. The issue that you're going to have with that is you're going to be hard pressed for there to be laws that would prohibit people from coming forward.
Shout out RealLyfe Street Stars, nigga. Move. Hey.